Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the 8th Magic Friday video review. I'm supposed to be talking about busking this week as a cap to our three-part series. The first part I was busking at the Olympics. Last week I gave a written list of everything that I've done and where it came from and what I'm doing. And this week I was going to just talk about how it all went off the street. However, I've really been working on some card magic the last hour. I want to share this with you instead. We're going to push the busking till next week. I hope you don't mind. Instead, I'm really excited to show you some card techniques that I've learned. So if you don't mind, we're just going to zoom in, and I've really been practicing, so I hope you really like this.
Hi, I'm Jason England, and welcome to Magic Friday.
Thanks for tuning in. I've got a special kind of surprise guest for you today, obviously. Everyone here, I'm sure, knows Jason England of world-famous card ninja fame. We've got about 6 minutes, so I thought instead of the usual Magic Friday review, it's not often we get to have someone of Jason's caliber in our midst, so I figured we'd just talk about a random topic that I came up with, which is, Jason, what do you think is the relevancy of Erdnase today? If I'm a card guy, should I still be reading Erdnase?
Erdnase who?
That's right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you should be reading Erdnase, and there's a variety of reasons for that. We talked a little bit privately about. Oh, by the way, you can put your ring back here. That deception is over.
That's right.
Is Erdnase still relevant to what modern magicians do? Well, if you handle a deck of cards and you do anything remotely like table riffle shuffle work or deal work, or just overall card handling in general, absolutely it's still relevant. Now, if you're doing Cardini style, or these days the big proponent would be Jeff McBride, a good friend of mine from Las Vegas. If you're doing that sort of stage manipulation, well then Erdnase may not really be all that relevant to you. But if you're doing anything that occurs on a table where you're doing a riffle shuffle or overhand shuffle work, any sort of pick a card trick, and then we've got a process where we lose it in the deck again, and then we find it, and all of those things are applicable across a wide spectrum of tricks, then absolutely it's still relevant.
So I could have my copy of Erdnase, go to the park, no knowledge, come out of the prison 6 months later, wherever I'm going, with that book and a deck of cards, and I could go out and perform great.
Absolutely. Now then, let's put this into perspective a little bit. I used to tell people this just to demonstrate how great a book Erdnase is. First of all, it is an old book, and it's not that I'm doing stuff right out of Erdnase word for word, because I'm not doing that. But what you get out of Erdnase, if you can read between the lines a little bit, and sort of take what he did in his era, which was over 100 years ago, and move it into the modern era, then the principles and the concepts that are in Erdnase are what are supremely valuable. So I used to tell this as a challenge to people. I said, I will give you any book written on card magic. Now, not general magic, but any book written on card magic.
Yeah.
35 years prior to Erdnase or 35 years after Erdnase. So you have a 70-year span.
Right.
And you can have any book...
from like 1870 to like 1930.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's from 1937 would be the high end.
Okay.
Because Greater Magic came out in 38.
Okay.
So you don't get Greater
I don't get Greater Magic.
35 years after Erdnase.
Okay.
35 years prior to Erdnase would be about 1867.
Right.
So you don't get, you know, some of the very, very earliest magic books, but you could still have, you know, some of the Hoffman books are in that era. You've got books like Sharps and Flats is in that area. You've got some, you know, you've got some good magic books.
Yeah.
But you don't have magic books that are really intensive on card technique in there. Erdnase sort of set the standard. It created the template for the modern card magic book. If you look at a book like, let's pick a magic book from that time period, you know, something like Roderberg's New Era Card Tricks. It's a really great classic 100-year-old book.
Okay.
The problem is it reads like a 100-year-old book. There's nothing in it. And I'm speaking generally, and there's probably some exceptions. I read New Era Card Tricks, and there's not a lot of technique in there that I would pull out of there and put right into a modern act and be happy with it. There's a lot of work to be done.
Okay.
With Erdnase, you can take it right off the page, drop it right into a modern act, and you have to do very little work to make it, to update it and make it applicable. So, New Era Card Tricks is great. It's a terrific book. Something like, I'm trying to think of another book from that era that would give you an example. Sax.
Okay.
You know, Sax Sleight of Hand is a terrific magic book.
Yeah.
But, you know, to take some of the card stuff from Sax and try to do a trick with it these days can absolutely be done. I would never say it couldn't be done, but it would come across as a little dated and a little stilted and stiff, in my opinion.
Yield card.
Exactly.
And that's right.
Erdnase comes right off the page, and you can use the techniques. Even if you don't do the exact tricks that he does, you can use the techniques. So Erdnase is sort of like, I give people this analogy all the time. If you went to take a modern class on evolutionary biology,
right,
the textbook that you would use would probably be a modern evolutionary biology textbook that your instructor would, you know, make you use.
Right.
And you could learn from a modern textbook. You'd know a lot, and that'd be great. But I guarantee you, at some point, if you were going to become an evolutionary biologist,
right,
you have to read On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin.
You got to go to the original.
You have to go back to the source. If you're going to be a true expert in the best sense of the word. If you're going to be a physician, you're going to go take an anatomy class in medical school or in pre-med. And it's probably not going to be a 100-year-old anatomy textbook. It's probably going to be a modern anatomy textbook.
Sure.
Great. Take that book, take all the fresh modern information, and run with it. But if you were ever going to teach anatomy, can you imagine proclaiming yourself as an anatomy instructor and you've never read Gray's Anatomy?
Right.
The one that kind of started it all. There's probably a lot of modern physics students that have never bothered to read the Principia by Isaac Newton.
Right.
First of all, it was written in Latin.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, right. First of all, it's written in Latin. But there are modern translations
Sure.
of the Principia that you could read.
Yeah.
Now, you could be a physics student for years and never read that book. But to be a physics professor or to be an expert in physics and to say, well, I never bothered to read Newton, because that's old stuff, and we've improved on all that stuff since then. Can you imagine being a geometry teacher and you've never read Euclid? The guy that kind of codified it first, he's the first guy that wrote it all down and really, you know, made it what it was. So, can you have a successful card magic career without reading Erdnase? Sure, you can. But if you want to be an expert, if you want to know everything there is to know about it,
an expert at the card table.
That's right. You have to get back to this book eventually. You have to read it. And the physicist that reads Isaac Newton's Principia, or that actually reads Einstein's, early papers on relativity, they'll find stuff in there that they knew about and learned about in the modern classes, but they'll go, oh wow, that's really interesting how he said that, and
how it came about.
And why don't people talk about this anymore? That's interesting, that's useful. If you're a geometry teacher and you read Euclid, you're going to go, I never thought of saying it like that. That's a really concise, good way of saying it. So there's valuable information to be mined out of these original fundamental sources, foundational texts for anything.
Reminded of Foundations, which is, of course, the name of one of your great DVDs, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's a misnomer, because those aren't foundations
available
at all.
at Theory 11. What would be, if you were to pull something out of Erdnase, if a kid came to you today, or even someone that hasn't had the great experience with Erdnase yet, and they said, listen, I want to pull 3 things out of Erdnase, what 3 things is that going to be?
2 of them would be concrete. Discrete, you can wrap your head around them. One of them is going to be a little intangible.
Okay.
The first thing to pull out of Erdnase that's concrete and discrete, and you can wrap your head around it, is his riffle table, or his riffle shuffle work on a table.
Okay.
Controlling a bottom slug, controlling a top slug,
Perfect.
False cuts, false running cuts. He called them blind riffles and shuffles and blind cuts, and his overhand shuffle work. So all of his shuffle work is absolutely as applicable today as it was 108 years ago. Okay. The second thing I would pull out of Erdnase that is discrete and that you can wrap your head around immediately is his palming. Wonderful stuff. Conceptually, it has not been improved upon.
Which is amazing, 100 years later.
Yep. Now, there are some technique refinements that I admit are nice that have been developed since then. Yeah. But conceptually, big picture-wise, nobody's improved on it. Okay, number 3? The third thing is his overall approach to magic. And this is the one that's sort of intangible. Okay. And that's because you can't just read 2 little paragraphs about it and that's it. It's scattered throughout the book. The idea that you should be natural. The idea that excessive displays of vanity are the undoing.
Which we don't have here.
Right. I mean, now, I excessively display skill in a gambling expose context. Something that existed in Erdnase's day, but for whatever reason, he didn't like to do it. But, all of these things, and you'll take from that, because it's intangible, I can't promise you what you'll take from it. Like, if you master the Erdnase palming system, I kind of know what you're doing. Right. But if you just read the book and you absorb some of his philosophy and his overall general outlook on magic and performing, what you take away may be slightly different from what I take away, but from my reading of the book and discussing it with other experts, we all agree that there's gold in them thar hills, and it's just, what do you take away from the book? And I love his general philosophy on all things gambling related and magic related, and it's just a terrific book for me. Your mileage may vary.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's our little talk with Jason England about Erdnase. I just went to his lecture last night, which was incredible. I went to his workshop, private workshop tonight, which blew my mind. It's going to be in Calgary in the next couple days. It's March the 6th today?
Today's the 6th.
So Calgary, then it's going to be Regina, then Victoria. And you can buy the lecture notes if you want to see all those moves I did at the beginning. You can get those if you email Jason at jasonengland.com. You can get the bottom deal.
Notes on the bottom deal
and the second deal. They're like $25 a piece. Yep. Cheap. Yep. $45 for both?
45 for both. You got to pick up shipping, but I give you $5 off if you buy them both.
It's a steal. I dare say it's a side steal.
Hey-o.
Hey-o. On that note, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. We'll wrap up that busking thing. Have a great time, and thanks for watching.